Hello, Anthony. This is Tulio. I'm going to try to take this opportunity to respond to your post, and then I also wanted to respond to the post that you put on my post. So there'll be two things on this one here. First of all, I want to shout out to you. Good job on the post. You shared a lot of information. You referenced a lot of material, and you quoted some material that's very relevant to the Patriot Act. And thanks for the good wishes out here on my combat in Afghanistan. Got about a month left, and I'm heading back home. So hopefully everything still be good for the next 30 days. First, you mentioned a lot of the problems, lack of information between the agencies sharing on terrorist individuals, either working, living, or exiting an entrance into the U.S. I completely agree with you. I remember reading about that when the terrorists attacked September 11. They had mentioned that there was individuals that they were tracking, different agencies, and for some reason they didn't know whether they had exited the country or came back in. So they tracked that they were going to school, they tracked that they were getting jobs, but individual agencies were doing this, and they weren't sharing the information across everyone. So we would have to agree that the Patriot Act was meant to fix that part right there. Just like you mentioned, two of the individuals, the terrorist attacks on September 11, they were getting tracked, but they just lost count of them, accountability of those guys. So I think the Patriot Act kind of just rolled everything under their provisions and put it under the Homeland Security, Department of Homeland Security, to have some kind of oversight on all these agencies, because they were conflicting between each other. You know, the power of knowledge, they didn't want to share that. So you had the CIA, FBI, DEA, the Immigration, Department of Justice, ATF, and probably the military, Department of Defense, not sharing information on individuals that we should have been tracking. So the Patriot Act was good for that piece. The other mention, you said that America is a target. Um, they just don't like our culture. They don't like our way. I mean, you name it. So we are a big target. I'm just kind of surprised we haven't been attacked more often than we have. As you can see, the Boston Marathon attack, two young individuals have been living in the U.S. for a while, had a radical change of mind. So that's just a small piece, but you know, you mentioned some of the guys up in Fort Dix, New Jersey, up in Oregon. I remember when those things happened. I hope that the Patriot Act was used to track those guys down, and I know some of the other students have mentioned some other events where the Patriot Act was good at tracking down the individuals. So I'm glad that the Patriot Act is working. You did mention that there is some issues with it, some civil liberty issues, but I'll take security and peace of mind in America, because like you mentioned, we are a big target. We are a democracy. We're a westernized society. There's a lot of countries out there in the Middle East, including Asia, far Asia, that just don't like the U.S. For many reasons. Korea, North Korea, China, all these countries in Russia, Chechen, like the two individuals where they came from. So I think the Patriot Act was right on target with trying to cover up all those things, along other things. For example, these individuals that perform activities in the U.S., terrorist activities, are now named terrorists. Before they were just criminals. Also, the big part I think is also the money. Al Qaeda money. All these terrorist guys had cash, had someone feeding them money, and I think the Patriot Act was good at that part too. You know, stopping the money, freezing bank accounts, identifying where they're getting the money from, and just taking it away. So I know that has helped to minimize a lot of the attacks on the U.S. Even in Europe, some of the individuals they caught, they said that because of the Patriot Act freezing a lot of their accounts, they were not able to implement some of their bigger attacks, so they had to take smaller targets. You also mentioned the gag order. I believe the gag order is required on certain missions, you know, that the agencies have. It's probably not required for everybody. You have to be kind of trustworthy of who you're dealing with. But you know, in courts you need gag orders because individuals are human beings and they will talk. They will talk to somebody else. They will talk, and then the whole counter espionage, counter terrorism that they have going down is probably out the door. It's lost. All right, so that was my post for on your post. So I just wanted to answer back on what you put on my post. You talked a lot about the abuses, civil rights abuses, possible abuses, and you mentioned some of the cases, like the young man up in, or the lawyer, or they traveled to Spain. I believe he was a lawyer, and he did win that court. He won $2 million in court because the FBI did not follow proper or good order when they tracked him down. So I think all these agencies, with oversight from the Department of Justice and Department of Homeland Security, they're going to have to get some better provisions, and I think this will get fixed throughout as provisions come along, because they cannot be paying a lot of money to all these individuals that want to sue because of improper intelligence gathering procedures. You know, using the sneak and peek, using the roving surveillance, also the national letter, trying to get materials from individuals to find out what's going on. They cannot be doing that wrong. So I'm sure that they're going to fix that. And I was reading on some of the provisions, the recent provisions for the Patriot Act. It says that there's going to be mandatory committees. So the Attorney General and the Inspector General, Department of Justice, are going to have to report to the Congressional Committee and the Senate on whether the provisions, the current provisions for the Patriot Act are working or not. And all these surveillances that they're doing and were not conducted properly, or and they ended up paying money or whatever it may be, all that's going to get reported to Congress and the Senate, and they're going to have to fix it somehow. Alright, so then you mentioned the the personnel individuals that were protesting the Patriot Act. I think that happens with every act. You're always going to have groups that just don't like it, just like Obamacare, you know, the welfare system. You're always going to have people that do not like the act. So I'm okay with that. I think the Senate, Congress, they're all okay with it, as long as they're protecting the U.S. personnel and making sure they go after domestic terrorists. Some of the things that you mentioned were the roving wiretaps. Yeah, I think that's necessary. The sneak and peek warrants, I think is necessary. Access to records, I think they call it the library provisions. All that is necessary, but like I said, they're gonna have to just fix the process. And like you mentioned, people are just gonna continue to sue the government if they're not doing the proper thing. So there has been some abuse documented, so they're gonna have to fix that. Also, I read something about the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act of '78. So, and Curtis on his post also mentioned that a lot of these provisions are already in place. They just expanded it so the government can have the speed and the access of going after individuals without having to go through the process, through the paperwork. So a lot of those things were already in place. Patriot Act just expanded, made it faster for them and more accessible. Also mentioned the money, go after the money, and they're gonna have to fix the intelligence gathering procedures. Alright, that's all I got. Good post, a lot of good references to quoting. Thanks for the good wishes, and I am out.